Nora Slonimsky. I'm a doctoral candidate in history at the CUNY Graduate Center. My dissertation is called The Engine of Free Expression, the Political Development of Copyright in the Colonial British Atlantic and Early National United States. Initially, I was at the library company next door, just trying to determine in their holdings if there were any books kind of on copyright, and if there were books on copyright, who had them. And I found that a book on Donaldson v. Beckett, which is a very significant British copyright case in the 18th century, had been purchased or acquired by the library company right around the time of yet another important copyright case, Wheaton v. Peters, in 1834. The person who had sold the library company this book was William Rawle. And I hadn't really heard of him very much. I mean, again, I knew that he was involved in Pennsylvania politics in the turn of the 18th into 19th centuries. I knew that he was close with Washington and he was sort of affiliated with certain figures in the Federalist Party. But beyond that, I didn't really know much. Sort of a very general Google search told me that he actually had been the first president of the Historical Society of Pennsylvania. And that I thought was really fascinating. So I really just wanted to find out more about him. So shortly after the death of William Rawle in 1836, the Historical Society of Pennsylvania had requested that at their meeting in April of that year, that there would be a discussion about the life of William Rawle. So they asked T.I. Wharton, who was a friend of Rawle's, also a lawyer, to speak at the meeting about his reflections on Rawle's life and the efforts he had made on behalf of Philadelphia and the contribution to Pennsylvania as a whole. Wharton then went and published his reflections a few years later, and that is the subject of the memoir. And Rawle was actually very important. He wasn't political in the strictest sense of the word. He had a brief tenure as a politician in the Pennsylvania Assembly, but he didn't particularly like that political atmosphere, but he was very much interested in other issues that would be relevant to it. He was a founding member and a lifelong, very aggressive supporter of the Pennsylvania Abolition Society. Plenty of people in the late 18th and early 19th century were anti-slavery, but he was an immediate abolitionist, meaning that he thought slavery should be ended completely and right away. So he was somewhat unique in that sense. He was appointed Attorney General for a time. He worked for George Washington. He actually prosecuted under the Whiskey Rebellion. And he also amassed, much to my interest, a very significant library. So Rawle did acquire several books in his lifetime on questions of copyright and questions of patents. And he mentions it in his own writing. And he discusses that he thinks copyright is an important question. I believe his phrasing is something to the effect of, I think it merits further conversation. So he senses that literary regulation alongside technology regulation, so copyright alongside patents, are going to become increasingly almost unavoidable issues that the United States is going to have to confront over the course of the 19th century. As the marketplace shifts, as the labor regimes are in flux, you're going to have to figure out the relationship between an individual worker and the state and how that's going to function.